The morning sun filtered through the tall glass windows of Reagan National Airport as Dr. Maya Johnson made her way through the bustling terminal. Her shoulders ached from the weight of her carry-on bag, and dark circles rimmed her eyes after the red-eye flight from San Francisco. The conference on defense technology had run late into the night, but Maya had insisted on catching the earliest flight back to Washington. There were reports waiting on her desk at the Pentagon that couldn't wait another day. Maya adjusted her navy blazer and straightened her back, trying to appear more awake than she felt. At 42, she had spent nearly 2 decades building her career in defense intelligence, earning her top-level security clearance through years of dedicated service. The heavy laptop bag slung across her shoulder contained documents that few people in the country were authorized to view. She glanced at her watch and quickened her pace. The terminal was filling up with morning travelers, business people clutching coffee cups, families corralling excited children, and airport staff moving with practiced efficiency. Maya blended in with the crowd, just another professional making her way through the airport, except for the special clearance badge tucked inside her wallet. "Excuse me, ma'am." The voice came from behind her, firm and authoritative. Maya turned to see 2 airport police officers approaching, one tall with a clean-shaven face and the other shorter with a military-style haircut. Both wore the blue uniforms of the airport police, their badges catching the morning light. "Yes, officer?" Maya replied, shifting her bag to her other shoulder. "We need you to step aside for a moment," the taller officer said, his hand resting casually near his belt. "We received a report about suspicious behavior in this area." Maya blinked in confusion. "Suspicious behavior? I just got off a flight from San Francisco." The shorter officer stepped forward, his eyes scanning her carry-on luggage. "Could I see some identification, please?" Maya nodded, reaching for her purse. She'd been through security checks countless times in her career. "Of course. I'm actually returning from a defense technology conference. I work as a consultant for the Pentagon." The officers exchanged glances that Maya couldn't quite read. "Pentagon?" the taller one repeated, his tone skeptical. "And what exactly do you do there?" Something in his voice made Maya pause. She'd encountered this before, the slight edge of disbelief when she mentioned her credentials. As one of the few black women in her position, she had grown accustomed to proving herself repeatedly in spaces where people like her were rare. "I'm a defense intelligence consultant. I specialize in cybersecurity systems," she explained patiently, digging through her purse for her ID. "I have clearance documentation if you need to see it." The shorter officer's radio crackled, and he turned away slightly to respond. Maya couldn't hear what was said, but when he turned back, his expression had hardened. "Ma'am, we've been informed that someone matching your description was seen in a restricted area earlier. We're going to need you to come with us for questioning." Maya felt a flash of frustration. "There must be some mistake. I just landed from San Francisco, gate C-14. You can verify that with the airline." More travelers were passing by now, some slowing to watch the interaction. Maya felt her cheeks warming under the curious gazes. She'd faced situations like this before, but it never got easier. The public scrutiny, the implied accusation, the burden of proving her innocence for simply existing in a space. "Officer, I understand you're doing your job, but this is a misunderstanding," Maya said, keeping her voice level despite her growing unease. "I have identification and Pentagon credentials that will clear this up quickly." The taller officer stepped closer. "Ma'am, please keep your hands where we can see them and speak in a lower voice." "I'm not raising my voice," Maya replied, bewildered by the escalation. "I'm simply trying to explain." "Step back from your luggage, please," the shorter officer interrupted, his hand moving to his belt. Maya felt a chill run through her body. The terminal seemed suddenly too bright, too loud, too full of watching eyes. She'd read about situations like this, had friends who experienced them, had even conducted sensitivity training for government employees about bias and perception. But experiencing it herself in the middle of a crowded airport felt surreal. "I'm going to reach for my Pentagon ID," she said clearly, making her movements deliberate and slow. "It's in the front pocket of my purse." As she moved her hand toward her bag, the taller officer suddenly stepped forward. "Stop! Hands where I can see them." Maya froze, her heart pounding. I'm just getting my ID as you requested. Turn around. And put your hands behind your back, the officer ordered, his voice loud enough that several more people stopped to watch. This is unnecessary, Maya protested, feeling a surge of both anger and fear. If you'd just allow me to show you my credentials. But the officer was already moving behind her. Ma'am, you're being detained for questioning. Please comply. The cold metal of handcuffs clicked around Maya's wrists before she could say another word. The sensation was jarring. In nearly 20 years of government service through countless security checkpoints and restricted areas, she had never once been treated like a criminal. Around them, a small crowd had gathered. Maya noticed at least 2 people holding up phones, recording the incident. The humiliation burned through her, but years of crisis management training kicked in. Stay calm, don't escalate, document everything. I want to be clear about what's happening, she said, her voice steady despite the handcuffs biting into her wrists. I'm being detained after explaining I'm a Pentagon consultant with proper identification. I've offered to show you my credentials multiple times. I'd like to know the specific reason for these handcuffs. The shorter officer glanced uncomfortably at the growing audience. Ma'am, we received reports of unauthorized access to a secure area. We're simply following protocol. And does this protocol include handcuffing all suspects before verifying their identity? Maya asked. Or am I receiving special treatment today? A few murmurs rippled through the watching crowd. One woman stepped forward, a business traveler, in her 50s. Officers, is this really necessary? She doesn't look dangerous to me. Please step back, ma'am, the taller officer said firmly. This is airport security business. Maya took a deep breath. 20 years of navigating predominantly white male-dominated spaces had taught her how to handle situations like this. She knew that showing anger, no matter how justified, would only reinforce their perception of her as a threat. Officers, she said calmly, I understand you're following procedure based on information you received. I'm not resisting or arguing. I'm simply asking for the opportunity to identify myself properly. My name is Dr. Maya Johnson. I hold a Level 8 security clearance with the Department of Defense. If you check my credentials, which I've been trying to show you, this situation can be resolved immediately. The officers exchanged glances again, uncertainty flickering across their faces as the crowd of onlookers grew larger. I'd like to make a phone call, Maya continued. I have the right to contact someone who can verify my identity. After a moment of hesitation, the shorter officer nodded. One call. With her hands still cuffed behind her back, Maya had to rely on the officer to retrieve her phone from her purse. It's in the side pocket, she directed. And I need you to dial the number. For me, please. The officer pulled out her phone, raising his eyebrows at the special government-issue device with its enhanced security features. What's the number? Maya recited a string of digits that made the officer pause. It wasn't a typical phone number. Format. That's a secure Pentagon line, she explained. Please put it on speaker. The officer dialed hesitantly, then held the phone up as it began to ring. The crowd around them had grown quieter, people straining to hear what would happen next. A crisp, professional voice answered on the third ring. Defense Intelligence Security Office. This is a secured line. Please identify. Maya spoke clearly, her voice carrying through the now hushed terminal. This is Dr. Maya Johnson. Clearance code Echo November 947. I'm currently being detained at Reagan National Airport by airport police. I require identity verification and assistance. There was a brief pause on the line. The officers watched Maya with growing uncertainty. Then the voice returned, suddenly more alert. Dr. Johnson, can you confirm your current location within the airport and the names of the officers present? The tension in the air thickened as Maya stood handcuffed in the middle of the busy airport terminal. More travelers had stopped to watch the scene unfold, some whispering to each other, others openly recording with their phones. Maya could feel dozens of eyes on her, but she kept her focus on the officers in front of her. Terminal C, near baggage. Claim, Maya replied to the voice on the phone, her tone professional despite the handcuffs digging into her wrists. I'm with 2 airport police officers. Their badge numbers are... She paused, glancing at their uniforms. Officer Wilson, badge number 4872, and Officer Chen, badge number 5301. The officers shifted uncomfortably as she read their information aloud. They hadn't expected her to be so observant under pressure. "Thank you, Dr. Johnson," the voice on the phone responded. "Please put one of the officers on the line." Officer Chen took the phone reluctantly, his expression wavering between annoyance and growing uncertainty. "This is Officer Chen, Airport Police." The conversation that followed was brief, but intense. The color slowly drained from Officer Chen's face as he listened to the voice on the other end. He glanced at Maya with new eyes. Not as a suspect, but as someone who might be far more important than he had initially assumed. "Yes, sir." "I understand, sir," he said repeatedly, his earlier confidence evaporating. "No, sir, we weren't aware of her position." "Yes, sir." A woman in the crowd leaned over to her companion. "What do you think is happening?" she whispered, just loud enough for Maya to hear. "Not sure," her friend replied, "but I think those cops just stepped in something deep." Maya maintained her composure, standing straight despite the discomfort of the handcuffs. Years of crisis management training had prepared her for stressful situations, though she'd never expected to use those skills while being wrongfully detained in her own country's airport. Officer Chen finally ended the call and handed the phone back to his partner with a grim expression. "We need to remove the handcuffs. Now." "What's going on?" Officer Wilson asked, confusion evident on his face. Chen lowered his voice, but in the tense silence of the watching crowd, his words carried. "She's not just Pentagon. She's directly under General Williams, Defense Intelligence Agency, top-level clearance. They're sending people here right now." The mention of General Williams, one of the most respected figures in military intelligence, changed everything. Officer Wilson quickly moved behind Maya to remove the handcuffs, his earlier bravado completely gone. "Dr. Johnson, I sincerely apologize for the misunderstanding," he said as the handcuffs came off. Maya rubbed her wrists, noting the red marks, where the metal had dug into her skin. "I tried to tell you from the beginning," she said quietly. "All of this could have been avoided if you had simply allowed me to show my identification." A commotion at the far end of the terminal drew everyone's attention. 3 people in dark suits were making their way through the crowd with purpose. The airport security director, a tall woman with silver-streaked hair, led the group, flanked by 2 military personnel in uniform. Their presence parted the crowd like a knife through butter. Officer Chen swallowed hard. "Airport Security Director Thompson is coming, with military escort." Maya recognized one of the military officers, Captain Luis Rivera from the Pentagon's security detail. She had worked with him on several projects over the past year. Seeing a familiar face among the chaos brought a small measure of relief. The security director reached them first, her expression thunderous. "Dr. Johnson, on behalf of Airport Security, I want to extend our deepest apologies for this incident." She turned to the officers, her voice dropping to a dangerous level. "Officers, you will report to my office immediately after this is resolved." Captain Rivera stepped forward, standing at attention. "Dr. Johnson, General Williams sent us to escort you back to the Pentagon. He's waiting for your briefing on the San Francisco conference findings." The crowd around them began to murmur more loudly, pieces of the story coming together in their minds. The woman who had spoken up earlier nodded with satisfaction, giving Maya a small smile of solidarity. Maya took a deep breath, acutely aware of how quickly the power dynamic had shifted. The same officers who had handcuffed her minutes ago now looked like they wanted to disappear into the floor tiles. It wasn't the first time she'd experienced this kind of reversal, the moment when people realized she wasn't who they had assumed she was. "My belongings?" Maya asked, gesturing to her carry-on and purse that the officers had set aside. "Of course, Dr. Johnson," Officer Wilson said quickly, retrieving her bags. His hands trembled slightly as he handed them over. Maya accepted her belongings with dignity. She could have unleashed her anger, could have demanded immediate consequences for the officers. Part of her wanted to, The humiliation of being handcuffed in public, of having to prove her worth and position yet again, burned inside her chest. But another part of her, the part that had navigated these waters her entire career, recognized a different opportunity. "Director Thompson," she said, turning to the airport security head, "once this immediate situation is resolved, I'd like to discuss implementing better protocols for identity verification. This kind of incident damages trust between law enforcement and the public. It's also potentially dangerous when it involves security-cleared personnel." The director nodded quickly. "Absolutely, Dr. Johnson. We would welcome your input." Captain Rivera checked his watch. "Dr. Johnson, we should proceed. The general is waiting." Maya nodded, but before leaving she turned back to the officers. Their faces showed a mixture of embarrassment and fear. Fear for their jobs. Fear of the repercussions that would surely follow. "Officers," she said, keeping her voice level, "I want you to understand something. I'm not interested in seeing your careers destroyed over this incident. What I want is for you to truly grasp why what happened here was problematic." She gestured subtly to the crowd around them, many still recording with their phones. "This situation escalated because of assumptions. You saw a black woman claiming Pentagon credentials and your immediate response was disbelief rather than verification. You chose handcuffs before checking identification. That's not good policing, and it's certainly not good security protocol." "Officer," Chen looked down, unable to meet her eyes. Officer Wilson nodded slowly, his earlier arrogance completely deflated. "I hope this becomes a learning moment," Maya continued. "Not just a disciplinary one." The crowd had grown larger, with airport staff now trying to disperse the onlookers and restore normal flow through the terminal. Maya could hear snippets of conversation as people discussed what they had witnessed. "Did you see that? They handcuffed her just like that. She works for the Pentagon? For real? Man, those cops are in deep trouble." Captain Rivera gently touched Maya's elbow. "Dr. Johnson, we should go. There's a car waiting." Maya nodded, gathering her belongings. As they began to walk away, a young black woman in her 20s stepped forward from the crowd. "Excuse me," she said hesitantly. I recorded what happened, if you need it for anything." Maya looked at the young woman, perhaps a college student around the same age Maya had been when she first started facing these kinds of barriers. She saw in the young woman's eyes the same determination she had felt at that age, the same need to stand up against injustice. "Thank you," Maya said quietly. "What's your name?" "Zoe," the young woman replied. "Zoe Williams. I'm a computer science major at Howard." Maya smiled. "Computer science, that was my field too." She reached into her bag and pulled out a business card, one of the plain ones that listed only her name and a secure email address, not her position. "If you ever want to talk about career paths in technology, send me a message. The world needs more women like you in this field." The young woman's eyes widened as she accepted the card. "Thank you, Dr. Johnson." As Maya turned to leave with her military escort, she heard the buzz of conversation resume behind her. The incident would likely be on social media within minutes. Another example of racial profiling gone wrong, but perhaps it would also become something more. A teaching moment, a catalyst for change, a reminder that appearances and assumptions could be dangerously misleading. Captain Rivera led her toward the airport exit, where a black government vehicle waited. "General Williams is quite concerned, Dr. Johnson. When he heard you were detained, he nearly came down here himself." Maya smiled slightly at the thought of the imposing general storming into the airport. That would have been something to see. As they approached the vehicle, Maya took one last look back at the terminal. The crowd was dispersing, the officers were speaking with Director Thompson, and normal airport activity was resuming. But she knew that what had happened would ripple outward, through social media, through the airport's security protocols, through the lives of everyone who had witnessed it. For the officers, it would be a hard lesson in checking assumptions. For the onlookers, perhaps a moment of awakening to realities they didn't often see. And for Maya herself, It was unfortunately just another day navigating a world that still, too often, judged her by her appearance rather than her credentials. The car door opened and Maya stepped inside, ready to put the incident behind her and focus on the work that awaited her at the Pentagon. There were reports to file, systems to secure, and a nation to protect. The same responsibilities she had carried for years, regardless of how many times she had to prove she deserved her place. The sleek black government SUV pulled up to the Pentagon's south entrance where the security checkpoint was already expecting their arrival. Maya gazed out the window at the massive five-sided building she'd worked in for over a decade. Despite everything that had happened at the airport, she felt a familiar sense of purpose returning. This was her domain, a place where her expertise was valued and her authority respected. Captain Rivera spoke quietly into his radio as they approached the checkpoint. Eagle 6, this is Firebird. Package is secure and arriving at south entrance. ETA 2 minutes. Maya smiled slightly at the military terminology. In Pentagon speak, she had just become a package in high-value personnel, requiring secure transport. It was a far cry from being a suspicious individual at the airport less than an hour ago. General Williams has called an emergency meeting in Conference Room Delta, Captain Rivera informed her as they passed through security with unusual speed. The airport incident has raised some security concerns. Director Thompson has already sent over preliminary reports. Maya nodded, checking her phone. News traveled fast in Washington's defense circles. She had 17 missed calls and dozens of text messages, colleagues, friends, and even her mother, who somehow always knew when something was happening with her daughter. That was quick, Maya remarked. The incident only happened an hour ago. Captain Rivera gave her a knowing look. Dr. Johnson, there were at least 30 civilians recording when you were handcuffed. The video is already trending. Our Pentagon Maya is gaining traction online. Maya groaned internally. She had spent years building her reputation based on her intellect and contributions to national security. The last thing she wanted was to become famous for being wrongfully detained. The elevator took them down to the secure levels of the building. As they walked through the corridors, Maya noticed people glancing at her with newfound curiosity. Word had clearly spread throughout the building. Dr. Johnson, a voice called out as they rounded a corner. Lieutenant Patel, one of the younger intelligence officers Maya had mentored, hurried toward her. Are you okay? We heard what happened at the airport. It's all over the building. Maya gave the young woman a reassuring smile. I'm fine, Lieutenant. Just another day of exciting commuting adventures. Everyone's talking about how you handled it, Lieutenant Patel continued, falling into step beside them. They said you were completely calm the whole time, even in handcuffs. Crisis management training pays off in unexpected ways, Maya replied dryly. Is the team ready for the briefing? I still need to present the findings from San Francisco. Yes, ma'am, they're waiting in Delta, and... Lieutenant Patel lowered her voice. General Williams is on the warpath. I've never seen him so angry. Maya sighed. William Williams, nicknamed Double Bill by Pentagon insiders, was not a man known for his gentle temperament, even on good days. As Deputy Director of Defense Intelligence, he commanded respect throughout the military hierarchy. His anger, when unleashed, was legendary. Wonderful, Maya muttered. Let's hope he directs that energy productively. They arrived at Conference Room Delta, one of the Pentagon's secure meeting spaces. The buzz of conversation inside immediately ceased when Maya entered. 12 high-ranking military and civilian personnel sat around the large oval table, with General Williams standing at the head. His imposing figure, 6'3" with silver hair and the posture of someone who had spent 40 years in military service, dominated the room. Dr. Johnson, he said, his deep voice filling the space. Good to see you in one piece. No tension in the room was palpable. These were people responsible for some of the nation's most sensitive intelligence operations, and they had just witnessed one of their own being publicly humiliated. It wasn't just about Maya, it was about what her treatment represented for the entire defense community. Thank you, General, Maya replied, setting her laptop bag on the table. I apologize for the delay in my arrival. General Williams waved his hand dismissively. Being wrongfully detained tends to interfere with punctuality. I believe we all understand. A few nervous laughs rippled through the room. Maya took her seat at the table, aware of the supportive glances from her colleagues. They had worked together for years, through national crises and security threats. In this room, at least, she never had to prove she belonged. Before we get to the San Francisco briefing, General Williams continued, we need to address the airport incident. Director Thompson has already contacted me with her deepest apologies and assurances that the officers involved will face appropriate consequences. Sir, Maya interjected, if I may, I'd prefer if this incident were used as an opportunity for improved training rather than simply punitive measures. General Williams raised an eyebrow. That's very gracious of you considering the circumstances, but this raises serious security concerns. You were carrying classified information from the conference. Had those officers confiscated your belongings without proper clearance, we could have had a security breach on our hands. Colonel Garcia, head of counterintelligence, leaned forward. Dr. Johnson is right, sir. This is a systemic issue that requires systemic solutions. Punishing two officers won't fix the underlying problem. And what problem is that exactly? Asked a newer addition to the team. Richard Powell from the Secretary of Defense's office. His tone suggested he didn't fully understand the implications. Maya met his gaze steadily. The problem, Mr. Powell, is that security protocols failed at multiple levels. The officers received a vague report about suspicious activity, and instead of following proper identification verification procedures, they escalated immediately to detention. That's not just a racial profiling issue. It's a critical failure of security protocol that could compromise operations if the wrong person is detained, or the wrong person is let through. The room fell silent as her words sank in. Maya had deliberately framed the issue as one of national security rather than racial bias. In these circles, that approach was more likely to gain traction. Dr. Johnson has a point, General Williams said. This isn't just about one incident. It's about a vulnerability in our security infrastructure. He turned to his aide. I want a full review of identification protocols for all DoD personnel, especially those carrying classified material. And I want a joint training program developed with airport security at all major transportation hubs. Maya felt a small sense of satisfaction. This was how change happened. Not through outrage alone, but by channeling that outrage into systemic improvements. Now, General Williams continued, let's get to the reason Dr. Johnson was in San Francisco in the first place. The cybersecurity conference findings, please. Maya opened her laptop and connected it to the room's secure display system. For the next 30 minutes, she briefed the team on the latest developments in quantum encryption and the potential vulnerabilities in current defense systems. The room's focus shifted entirely to the technical details, the earlier incident temporarily set aside in favor of national security concerns. As she concluded her presentation, Maya noticed new notifications appearing. On her phone, the airport video had indeed gone viral, with major news networks picking up the story. Her private life was about to become very public. Questions? She asked, completing her briefing. Colonel Garcia raised his hand. What's our timeline for implementing these new security measures? If our adversaries are already developing quantum computing capabilities as you suggest, we're in a race against time. Maya nodded. Based on the intelligence gathered at the conference, I'd estimate we have a 12-18-month window before these vulnerabilities become critical. I've outlined a phased implementation plan on page 47 of your briefing packets. The discussion continued, with each team member weighing in on their department's role in the proposed security upgrades. This was the work Maya loved: collaborative, problem-solving at the highest levels of national defense. It was what made all the other challenges worthwhile. As the meeting concluded, General Williams asked Maya to stay behind. When the room had cleared, he closed the door and turned to her with an unusually gentle expression. You handled yourself admirably today, both at the airport and here, he said. Not everyone would have kept their composure in similar circumstances. Maya shrugged slightly. It wasn't my first rodeo, General. That's precisely the problem, isn't it? He sighed heavily, suddenly looking his age. It shouldn't be something you have to prepare for. Not after everything you've accomplished. Maya was surprised by his candor. General Williams was known for his tactical brilliance and unwavering dedication to national security, but not for his emotional intelligence. The world changes slowly, sir, she replied. Even in places like this. Too slowly. He walked to the window overlooking the Potomac River. You know, when I joined the military 40 years ago, I could count the number of black generals on one hand. Now things are better, but days like today remind us how far we still have to go. Maya nodded, appreciating his perspective. General Williams had been a mentor throughout her Pentagon career, recognizing her talents when others might have overlooked them. Sir, about the airport video, Maya began. Already being handled, he interrupted. Our public affairs team is preparing a statement emphasizing the importance of proper security protocols without discussing classified details of your work. The focus will be on improving systems, not inflaming tensions. Maya felt relieved. The last thing she wanted was to become a political talking point or worse, to have her professional accomplishments overshadowed by this incident. Thank you, sir. General Williams turned from the window. One more thing, Dr. Johnson. The Secretary of Defense has requested your presence at tomorrow's briefing. After today's events and in light of your findings in San Francisco, he believes your input on the new cybersecurity directive will be valuable. Maya's eyebrows raised slightly. Briefings with the Secretary were typically reserved for department heads and military leaders. It was a significant professional opportunity. I'd be honored, sir. Isn't? She gathered her materials to leave. General Williams added, And Maya, for what it's worth, I'm sorry this happened to you today. In a perfect world, your biggest concern coming off that plane should have been whether the Pentagon cafeteria was serving that terrible meatloaf again. Maya laughed, appreciating his attempt at lightening the mood. The meatloaf is still the greater threat to national security, sir. She left the conference room and headed back to her office where her team would be waiting for direction on implementing the new security measures. The day had taken an unexpected turn, but in some ways, perhaps it had been necessary. Real change often required a catalyst, something to shake people out of complacency and force them to confront uncomfortable realities. As she walked through the Pentagon's labyrinthine corridors, her phone buzzed with another notification. The video had reached 1 million views. By tomorrow, everyone would know her name, though few would understand her actual work or contributions. It was a strange kind of visibility, being known for an incident rather than for the decades of service behind it. But Maya had long ago learned to focus on what she could control. And right now, that meant turning this unwelcome spotlight into something productive. Better security protocols, improved training, and perhaps a small step toward a world where someone like her wouldn't have to prove they belonged quite so often. Maya's phone wouldn't stop buzzing. By the next morning, the airport incident had exploded across every major news network and social media platform. As she got ready for work, morning shows played clips of her handcuffed in the terminal, followed by serious-faced anchors discussing racial profiling and security protocols. It felt surreal to see herself at the center of a national conversation while brushing her teeth. The video, which has now been viewed over 5 million times, shows Dr. Maya Johnson being handcuffed by airport police despite repeatedly offering to show her Pentagon credentials, a news anchor explained as footage played on Maya's bedroom TV. Her mother had already called 3 times. The last message simply said, "Baby, you're on Good Morning America, call me." Maya sighed, adjusting her navy suit jacket in the mirror. She had chosen her outfit carefully today, the same professional attire she always wore, but with her highest Pentagon security badge prominently displayed. No one would question her credentials today. Her townhouse doorbell rang at precisely 7:30 a.m. The Pentagon had arranged for secure transportation given the media attention. When she opened the door, she was surprised to find Lieutenant Patel instead of the usual security detail. "Good morning, Dr. Johnson," the young officer said with a nervous smile. "General Williams assigned me as your aide for the next few days. He thought you might need some support managing everything." She gestured vaguely at the news van parked down the street. "That was thoughtful of him," Maya replied, genuinely appreciative. She grabbed her briefcase and locked the door behind her. "Fair warning, Lieutenant, this might get circus-like." "Already has, ma'am. There are reporters at every Pentagon entrance." They made their way to the waiting SUV, ignoring the shouts from the journalists who had somehow found her address. As they pulled away from the curb, Maya's phone rang with a number she didn't recognize. "Dr. Johnson speaking," she answered professionally. "Dr. Johnson, this is Congresswoman Diane Hart." The voice was instantly recognizable, the powerful chair of the House Intelligence Committee. "Do you have a moment to speak?" Maya exchanged glances with Lieutenant Patel, whose eyes had widened at the mention of the Congresswoman's name. "Of course, Congresswoman. How can I help you?" "First, let me say how disturbed I was by the video from yesterday. It's unacceptable that someone of your stature and security clearance was treated that way." The Congresswoman's voice was controlled but carried unmistakable anger. "The Intelligence Committee is holding hearings next week on airport security protocols, and we'd like you to testify." Maya hadn't expected this. Testifying before Congress would amplify the incident even further and pull her away from her actual work. "Congresswoman, while I appreciate the concern, I'm not sure my testimony would be helpful. This was an isolated incident that's being addressed internally." "Dr. Johnson," the Congresswoman interrupted gently, "this is hardly isolated. You and I both know that. The difference is that most people who experience this treatment don't have the Pentagon sending cars to rescue them. Your position gives you a platform to effect real change." Maya watched the city pass by outside the window. She had spent her career focused on the work itself, deliberately avoiding becoming a spokesperson for diversity issues. She had always believed she could make the most difference by excelling at her job and quietly mentoring others like her. But perhaps this moment required something different. "I understand, Congresswoman. Let me discuss this with my superiors and get back to you." After ending the call, Lieutenant Patel looked at her with admiration. "Are you going to do it, ma'am? Testify?" Maya shook her head slightly. "I don't know yet. Let's get through today first." The Pentagon was buzzing with unusual energy when they arrived. Colleagues who normally gave her respectful nods now stopped to express support or share their outrage over the incident. The attention was uncomfortable. Maya had always preferred working behind the scenes. "Dr. Johnson," a voice called out as she made her way through the corridor to her office. Defense Secretary Thomas was walking toward her, flanked by his usual entourage of aides. Everyone in the hallway immediately stood straighter. "Mr. Secretary," Maya acknowledged, surprised to see him outside of the scheduled briefing. "Walk with me," he said, not slowing his pace. Maya fell into step beside him while Lieutenant Patel and the Secretary's aides followed at a respectful distance. "I've watched that airport video a dozen times," Secretary Thomas said quietly. "My daughter sent it to me before the Pentagon communications team even knew about it. She's at Howard University, studying computer science." He glanced at Maya. "She has a poster of you in her dorm room, you know, from that STEM initiative you led last year." Maya hadn't known that. The thought of being a role model to young women like the Secretary's daughter both honored and humbled her. "Sir, about the congressional hearing. Hart called you already, didn't she?" The Secretary shook his head. "That woman doesn't waste time. Look, the decision is yours, but understand that whatever you choose will have political ramifications. If you testify, it becomes a bigger story with more scrutiny on the department. If you don't, some will claim we silenced you." They reached the elevator that would take them to the secure briefing level. The Secretary pressed the call button and turned to face her directly. "For what it's worth, I think your voice should be heard. Not just as a Pentagon employee, but as someone who's navigated these waters for years. But I also understand if you prefer to keep your focus on the critical work you're doing. God knows we need your expertise on this quantum encryption issue." The elevator arrived and they stepped inside alone. the aides remaining in the hallway. "I'll consider it carefully, Mr. Secretary," Maya promised as the doors closed. "Good. And Maya?" He rarely used her first name. "For the record, I'm sorry that happened to you. It shouldn't have." When the elevator doors opened again, they were back to being Secretary Thomas and Dr. Johnson, their brief moment of personal connection replaced by professional formality as they entered the briefing room where Joint Chiefs and intelligence directors waited. The morning passed in a blur of technical discussions and strategic planning. Maya presented her findings on quantum encryption vulnerabilities with her usual precision and clarity. If anyone in the room was thinking about the viral video rather than national security, they didn't show it. During the lunch break, Lieutenant Patel approached with Maya's secure phone. "Dr. Johnson, General Williams needs to speak with you urgently." Maya stepped into an empty office and returned the general's call. "Sir?" "Johnson, we have a situation brewing. Airport Director Thompson just called. The 2 officers who detained you have received death threats. The airport is concerned about public backlash against their entire security force." Maya closed her eyes briefly, feeling the weight of unintended consequences. "That's exactly what I didn't want to happen. I know. But we need to get ahead of this before it escalates further. The Pentagon press secretary is drafting a statement condemning threats of violence while emphasizing our commitment to improving security protocols. Would you be willing to add a personal statement? Something emphasizing that accountability doesn't mean endangering lives." Maya thought about the officers, Wilson and Chen. Despite their mistakes, they didn't deserve threats. "Yes, I'll draft something immediately." After the call, Maya sat at the empty desk and quickly composed a statement emphasizing that meaningful change required dialogue and education, not intimidation or threats. She sent it to the press secretary with a request that it be released as soon as possible. Lieutenant Patel appeared at the door. "Ma'am, there's someone here to see you. She says her name is Zoe Williams. From the airport yesterday? She's at the visitor checkpoint." Maya remembered the young computer science student who had recorded the incident. "Have her cleared and brought to my office after the briefing ends." The afternoon session concluded with Secretary Thomas announcing the formation of a new task force on security protocol reform, with Maya appointed as co-chair alongside a senior Homeland Security official. It was a significant responsibility, added to her already full plate, but Maya recognized it as both an opportunity and a strategic move by the secretary to demonstrate the Pentagon's commitment to addressing the issues raised by her experience. As she gathered her materials, Secretary Thomas approached again. "The task force announcement is already hitting the news cycle. Press is calling it the Johnson Initiative." Maya raised an eyebrow. "That's not what we agreed to call it," he shrugged. "Media creates their own names for things. Consider it recognition of your influence." He paused. "Have you decided about the congressional testimony?" "I'm leaning toward yes," Maya admitted. "But I want to be clear about the scope. Focused on security protocols and solutions, not just rehashing what happened to me." The secretary nodded approvingly. "I'll have my staff coordinate with Hart's office." He checked his watch. "I need to brief the president in an hour." He watched the video too, by the way. Asked if you were okay. The casual mention of presidential awareness of her situation added another layer of surreality to an already extraordinary day. Maya thanked the secretary and made her way back to her office where Lieutenant Patel waited with Zoe Williams. The young woman stood nervously as Maya entered, clutching her backpack. She looked both intimidated and awestruck by the Pentagon surroundings. "Zoe," Maya greeted her warmly. "This is unexpected. How did you find me?" "I didn't exactly," Zoe explained. "I went to the main Pentagon entrance and showed them your card. I thought they'd just take a message, but then they called someone, and suddenly I was being escorted inside." She looked around the office with wide eyes. "I've never been inside the Pentagon before." Maya gestured for her to sit. "What can I do for you, Zoe?" The young woman set her backpack on the floor. "I wanted to show you something before I posted it online. After what happened yesterday, I went home and edited the video I took, but not like the clips on the news. I made a longer version that shows everything, including what you said to the officers afterward about learning instead of punishment. She pulled out her laptop. I thought people should see that part too, not just the handcuffs. Maya was touched by the young woman's thoughtfulness. May I see it? As they watched Zoe's edited video together, Maya was struck by seeing herself through someone else's eyes, the calm she'd maintained, the dignity she'd tried to preserve even in handcuffs, the measured words she'd chosen when speaking to the officers afterward. The footage captured not just an incident of bias but a moment of potential transformation. This is really well done, Zoe, Maya said when it ended. You have a good eye for storytelling. Zoe beamed at the praise. I'm minoring in digital media, along with computer science. Do you think it would help if I shared this version? I want people to see the whole story, especially the part about making things better, instead of just being angry. Maya considered the question carefully. The viral clips had fueled outrage, which had already led to death threats against the officers. Perhaps a more complete perspective could help channel that energy in more productive directions. Yes, she decided. I think it would help. Just be prepared for the attention it might bring your way. Zoe nodded seriously. I'm ready. Actually, that's the other reason I came. After yesterday, I looked you up online. Your work in cybersecurity, your presentations at tech conferences, everything. You've been where I'm trying to go. She took a deep breath. I wanted to ask if I could interview you for my Women in STEM project, to show other girls like me what's possible. Maya felt an unexpected surge of emotion. In all the chaos of the past 24 hours, the humiliation, the media frenzy, the high-level meetings, this simple request from a young woman who saw herself in Maya's journey suddenly seemed like the most important outcome of all. I'd be honored, Zoe, she said sincerely. We all need to see examples of people who look like us succeeding in spaces where we're still too rare. As they discussed details for the interview, Maya's phone buzzed with yet another news alert about the airport incident. But for the first time since it happened, she didn't feel like just the subject of a viral video. In Zoe's earnest questions and ambitious plans, Maya saw the real impact she could have, not just through her technical work, but through her visibility and voice. Perhaps becoming a reluctant symbol wasn't what she had planned for her career. But if it opened doors for young women like Zoe, maybe it was a role worth embracing after all. 3 months had passed since the airport incident, and Maya's life had transformed in ways she never anticipated. As she prepared for her keynote address at the National Conference for Women in Technology, she gazed out the hotel window at the Washington Monument glowing in the distance. The city looked peaceful from 20 floors up, belying the whirlwind of change she'd experienced since that fateful day at Reagan National. Her phone chimed with a text from Lieutenant Patel, who had become her permanent aide and something of a friend over the past months. Car arriving in 30 minutes. Also, your interview with Time magazine is officially on the cover. It's everywhere. Maya smiled and opened her laptop to check the article. There she was on the digital cover of Time, standing in front of the Pentagon in her signature Navy suit, arms crossed confidently. The headline read, "The Security Expert Who Changed the System. How Dr. Maya Johnson Turned a Moment of Injustice into National Reform." The article detailed the sweeping changes that had resulted from her congressional testimony 3 months earlier. The Johnson Protocol, as it had indeed become officially known, was now being implemented at airports nationwide, revamping how security personnel verified credentials and handled suspected security concerns. The new system emphasized verification before escalation and included specific training on unconscious bias. Maya closed the laptop and returned to reviewing her speech notes. Public speaking had never been her favorite activity, but it had become a significant part of her expanded role. In addition to her technical work at the Pentagon, she now co-chaired the Federal Task Force on Security Reform and had become an unofficial but influential voice on diversity in national security circles. A knock at her hotel room door interrupted her thoughts. "Room service," a voice called. Maya opened the door to find not only her breakfast but also a small bouquet of flowers with a card. The hotel staff member smiled as he wheeled in the tray. "These were delivered for you this morning, Dr. Johnson." After he left, Maya opened the card. "Knock 'em dead today. The president will be watching the live stream. Secretary Thomas." The casual mention of presidential attention no longer surprised her. In the month since the incident, she'd briefed the president twice on cybersecurity matters and had been invited to the White House for a private meeting about her experiences and recommendations for systemic change. Her expertise had finally taken center stage, even if it had required a viral video to fully capture the nation's attention. As she ate breakfast, Maya scrolled through her emails, pausing at one from Officer Wilson. Both he and Officer Chen had reached out to her a week after the incident, their messages full of shame and genuine apology. Rather than ignore them, Maya had suggested something unexpected, that they join the working group developing the new security protocols. Their first-hand experience with the flawed system, combined with their willingness to learn from their mistakes, had proven invaluable to the reform process. Wilson's email included a photo of the officers at their graduation from the new bias awareness training program. They were now certified to train other officers across the country. His message was simple: "Thank you for seeing potential for change when you could have just seen our failure." Maya felt a quiet satisfaction. This was the outcome she had hoped, for not punishment but transformation, not just for two officers but for an entire system. She finished getting ready, gathering her materials for the speech. Today's audience would include hundreds of young women in STEM fields, including a group from Howard University, led by Zoe Williams. The young woman's edited video had indeed gone viral, offering a more nuanced perspective on the airport incident and highlighting Maya's call for constructive change. The video had launched Zoe's own mini-career as a digital storyteller focused on social justice issues, earning her a prestigious internship with a major news network. The hotel lobby was bustling when Maya emerged from the elevator. She immediately spotted her security detail, a necessary addition to her life since she'd become a public figure. They escorted her to the waiting car, skillfully deflecting a few hotel guests who recognized her and wanted photos. "Dr. Johnson," her lead security officer greeted her, opening the car door. "We have a slight change of plans. General Williams would like to meet you at the venue before your speech. He's already there." Maya nodded, wondering what prompted the General's early arrival. They had worked closely together over the past months, with him providing crucial military support for her security reform initiatives. Despite his gruff exterior, he had become one of her strongest allies in navigating the complex politics of systemic change. The convention center was already teeming with attendees when they arrived. Young women in professional attire streamed through the main entrance, many carrying signs with quotes from female tech leaders, including, Maya noticed with some embarrassment, several featuring her own words from recent speeches and interviews. Her security team escorted her through a private entrance where General Williams waited, dressed in full military uniform adorned with his impressive array of medals and commendations. "Johnson," he greeted her with a nod. "Good to see you." "You too, sir, though I wasn't expecting you quite so early." The general's typically stern expression softened slightly. "Wanted to show you something before the crowds arrived." He gestured for her to follow him into the main exhibition hall. Maya gasped when they entered the vast space. Along the main wall, a huge banner displayed black and white portraits of pioneering women in technology and security fields throughout American history. And there, at the end of the chronological display, was her own image. Dr. Maya Johnson listed alongside historical figures who had broken barriers and transformed their fields. "The organizers wanted to surprise you," General Williams explained. "But I thought you might want a moment to process it privately." Maya stared at her portrait among the historical figures, feeling both honored and somewhat uncomfortable with the elevation. "I'm not sure I belong up there, sir. Not yet, anyway." "Disagree," the general said firmly. "History isn't just about what happened in the distant past. Sometimes we're lucky enough to witness it unfolding in real time." He gestured toward the entrance where attendees were beginning to filter in. Every young woman who sees you on that wall today will know that they belong in spaces where they've been told they don't. That's historic. Before Maya could respond, her phone buzzed with a message from Lieutenant Patel. Airport Director Thompson has arrived with special guests. Maya excused herself and made her way to the side entrance where Director Thompson waited, with two people Maya didn't immediately recognize. A middle-aged black woman and an older black man, both dressed formally and looking somewhat overwhelmed. By the busy convention center, Dr. Johnson, Director Thompson greeted her warmly. Their working relationship had evolved into mutual respect over the months of collaboration on the new security protocols. I hope you don't mind, but there are two people who very much wanted to attend your speech today. The woman stepped forward, and Maya suddenly saw the familiar eyes. The same eyes she saw in the mirror every morning. Aunt Vivian? Uncle Harold? Maya exclaimed, surprised to see her mother's sister and her husband. What are you doing here? I thought you were still in Detroit. Aunt Vivian embraced her tightly. Your mother arranged it. Said we shouldn't miss. Seeing our niece make history. She pulled back, her eyes glistening. Your grandfather would have been so proud, Maya. So proud. Maya felt a lump form in her throat. Her grandfather, her mother's father, had been one of the first black security officers at the Detroit Metropolitan Airport in the 1960s. He had faced discrimination and barriers that made her own experience seem mild by comparison. He had passed away during Maya's first year at MIT, but his stories about fighting for dignity in uniform had shaped her approach to her own career challenges. He's the reason I didn't demand those officers be fired, Maya said softly. Grandpa always said systems don't change if good people get pushed out instead of educated. Uncle Harold nodded, squeezing her shoulder. He's watching today, no doubt about it, probably telling everyone up there that his granddaughter is fixing what he couldn't. Director Thompson, who had stepped back to give them space, approached again. Dr. Johnson, we should get to our seats. They'll be introducing you in about 20 minutes. Maya's family members were escorted to reserved front row seats while she made her way backstage. The green room was quiet, offering a moment of stillness, before she would face the crowd of nearly 2,000 attendees. She reviewed her speech one last time, making a few final adjustments. What had started as a standard keynote about cybersecurity careers had evolved into something more personal. A message about resilience, systemic change, and the responsibility that comes with unexpected platforms. A production assistant appeared at the door. 5-minute warning, Dr. Johnson. Maya nodded and gathered her notes, taking a deep breath. Through the curtain, she could hear the convention hall buzzing with anticipation. The past 3 months had taught her that sometimes leadership meant stepping into spotlights you never sought, using moments of injustice as catalysts for change larger than yourself. When the introducer called her name, the audience erupted, in applause and a standing ovation before she had spoken a single word. As Maya walked to the podium, she saw them all, Zoe and her classmates from Howard University, Officers Wilson and Chen sitting respectfully in the middle section, General Williams and Secretary Thomas near the back, Aunt Vivian and Uncle Ai, Harold beaming from the front row, and hundreds of young women whose paths might be slightly easier because of what had happened that day at the airport. Maya adjusted the microphone and waited for the applause to die down. Thank you for that warm welcome. 3 months ago, I was just a Pentagon cybersecurity expert focused on technical problems and solutions. I never expected to become part of a national conversation about security, dignity, and belonging in America. She paused, looking out at the diverse faces watching her intently. But that's the thing about transformation. It rarely arrives on schedule or as expected. Sometimes it begins with a moment of injustice that could have ended with nothing but anger and punishment. Instead, it became something else, a catalyst for change that none of us could have created alone. Maya gestured toward Officers Wilson and Chen, who straightened respectfully in their seats. Real change happens when we recognize that systems fail not just because of bad individuals, but because of flawed protocols and insufficient training. When we focus on fixing the system rather than simply punishing people, we create space for genuine transformation. As she continued her speech, Maya shared the technical details of the new security protocols alongside the personal story of her grandfather's struggles. She spoke about quantum encryption and unconscious bias training with equal expertise. She acknowledged the uncomfortable spotlight while emphasizing how she had chosen to use it. My story went viral because I was handcuffed at an airport, but that's not actually the most interesting part of who I am or what I do, she said toward the end of her speech. The most valuable contribution any of us can make isn't in the moments when we're treated unfairly, but in how we transform those moments into meaningful change that outlasts the viral video cycle. She looked directly at the section where Zoe and the Howard University students sat, their faces full of hope and determination. To the young women here today who dream of careers in technology, security, or any field where you might still be
the only one in the room, remember this. Your expertise is your power, your voice is your legacy, and sometimes your greatest impact comes from moments you never would have chosen. As Maya concluded her speech to thunderous applause, she
felt a sense of completion. The airport incident would always be part of her story, but it no longer defined her. What defined her now was what she had built from that moment: a more effective security system, a platform for change, and a path that others could follow with fewer obstacles than she had faced. The standing ovation continued as she left the stage, where Lieutenant Patel waited with a tablet displaying social media reactions already flooding in. But Maya waved it away. For once, she wasn't interested in what the wider world thought of her words. Instead, she headed directly to where her aunt and uncle waited, pulling them into a tight embrace. Grandpa really would be proud, wouldn't he? She whispered. Aunt Vivian cupped Maya's face in her hands. Oh, baby, he wouldn't just be proud. He'd say you're exactly where you're supposed to be, making history by making things right.